What's going on, everyone? My name's Eric, and today on the channel we're going to be taking a look at this guitar here. This is one of the Black Metal series guitars from ESP LTD. This is the LTD M series body shape here, and obviously it's the Black Metal series. And if you're unfamiliar with the Black Metal series, it's a single pickup, no nonsense guitar that is just built for metal. If you couldn't tell from the aesthetics and the design choices here, I mean, I'm sure you could probably play some other styles of music on here, but it might look a little out of place playing a guitar like this in, let's say, a pop or a jazz kind of setting. But regardless of what kind of genre you're going to be playing on this kind of guitar here, I'm actually really excited to get my hands on it and give it a once-over, set this guitar up before it goes on tour with the owner of this guitar, and honestly just give you my thoughts and opinions on this guitar, as I've always liked LTD's offerings, and especially the Black Metal series. It's a really cool design here. It's very stripped down. It's very no-nonsense. I'm excited to work on the Evertune bridge again, as this guitar has an Evertune bridge, and kind of show you all a little bit of like a do and a don't, if you will, in terms of like setting up your Evertune and really getting it to work the best that it can be for your particular use of an Evertune or a guitar that comes with one. So with all that being said, let's get this guitar on the bench and let's give it a full setup. This is a brand new guitar, and just as some of the other guitars that I've had on the channel that are brand new, they're not really going to need a big setup from the factory. Like as they are leaving the factory and as they're leaving the country of origin of which they were made in, they should be receiving a good amount of quality control before they hit dealer shelves. Obviously that is not the case in some other guitar companies, but that is for another video on its own. But in this case, anything that is really coming out of the World Music Factory in South Korea that's really making these LTD, Schecter, or PRS SE guitars, or any guitar that comes out of there, and those guitars aren't going to need much outside of maybe changing the strings to your desired string gauges or changing the action depending on how you like the guitar to play. I am going to go over the Evertune in a little bit of detail in this video. It's not that hard to work on in terms of setting up a guitar. I'm not going to be talking about how to actually service this and like maybe pulling it apart. That is for a different time altogether. This is just a simple setup because this Evertune works and there's no issues with it. And if you're unfamiliar with the Evertune, essentially it makes your guitar not go out of tune, which is a really great studio tool and a great tool to use with your live guitar, so you don't have to constantly tune between your songs. And another thing too about the Evertune is that you can set it up in a few different ways. The one way you can actually set it up is that when you go and bend the string, the note is not going to change pitch. So that's a really cool thing as well. If you're not really bending or anything like that and you really want to have really good note accuracy and tuning stability. Another way you can set up the Evertune is that when you bend the string, it's actually going to change pitch like it would on a normal guitar and anything like that. But it's always going to come back to staying in tune regardless, because that is the whole principle of an Evertune. As you're going to see with some of the close-ups, each of the saddles that the strings are sitting in, they're actually at different angles from each other, which actually means that these saddles are between zone 2 and zone 3. And it might be kind of hard to hear, but as I pluck the strings and just kind of bend them, like I'm bending the string pretty good right here, and the note isn't really changing pitch that much. But then if I go to a different string, like the note is going to change a lot on this G string versus the high E string. Now that means the strings are set up in different zones from each other. That's totally cool, but the owner of this guitar actually wants every string to bend a good amount. So that's what we're gonna do in this. So you can have your guitar set up like this, but that also might be an incorrect setup depending on how you are viewing the Evertune and how you want the Evertune to work for your current playing style. So I'm gonna show a few different close-ups on screen so then you can see the difference, especially for how the bridge saddles are sitting, depending on whether you are in zone 2 or zone 3, or essentially having the note bend and change pitch when you bend it, or the note actually not changing pitch when you bend the string. This is a pretty easy thing to do, but if this is your first time with an Evertune, I get how it can maybe be confusing since there are way more moving parts in the Evertune than, let's say, a standard bridge or even a Floyd Rose, for example. So we're gonna try and make this as easy as we can to actually get your Evertune guitar set up as easy and as quick as possible and get it playing the best as it can be. So I'm gonna get the strings off this guitar. I'm gonna hydrate the fretboard. Frets, I'm pretty sure, are stainless steel, so I'm not gonna really clean them or anything like that. Once all of that is done, we're gonna do a deep dive and get into the Evertune and get this bridge set up as it should be. All right, so now we are at the point where we are going to restring this Evertune equipped guitar. So once you take all of the strings off of your guitar that has an Evertune, all of the individual saddles are just going to be back like this, kind of on an angle, and that means you're kind of ready to go. If your saddle is not back like this when you have zero tension on the guitar or the strings are off, you're probably going to have some bigger issues than we are going to be covering in this video. So you might have to bring your guitar into a tech if something is going on with your saddles and they are not at this stage right here when you have no string tension on the guitar. So once you're at this stage right here, you can go ahead and simply just re-string your guitar. The next thing you want to do is actually tune your guitar to the tuning that you want to have your guitar being played in, and you're going to do that using the tuners at the headstock and tuning the guitar as you would any sort of traditional guitar. Now once you are tuning the guitar up to the desired pitch, you're going to notice every string saddle is going to be moving, And again, this is all going to depend on which zone you want your actual strings to be in. This is totally normal to see when you are tuning up your guitar for the first time with an Evertune. So to get the string on the Evertune where it changes pitch when you bend it, essentially what you want to do, you just keep tuning that string using like the traditional tuner at the top of the headstock. You can hear the note just went sharp. You tune it up a little bit and then you back it down. And there we go. So now just to show you all a quick example of how you can set up your Evertune guitar here. Now this is going to be a pretty quick overview. I have this low string down here. This is the low A string. You can see that the low string saddle here is pretty straight here. It might be on a bit of an angle, but essentially, I'm not sure how well that's going to pick up on camera, but as I'm bending the note, the pitch is actually changing. Now, for this next string here, the A string is actually tuned to an E. You could see, it might be hard to see on camera, the actual saddle is sitting on an angle here. Now, there's a bit of note change. Now, if I actually dial this in much more accurately, the note is not going to change pitch at all. But as the owner wants it, he wants this guitar to actually be able to change the pitch when I'm bending the string. So if you are getting confused on why the pitch is not changing when you are tuning up your Evertune guitar, don't worry about it. It is not an issue because the actual saddle has to come up if you wanted to get into the zone where the note will actually change pitch when you bend the string. And no, you will not break your guitar string. It is totally normal, and that's the design of the Evertune. Just make sure you're actually listening with your ear, or even if you have a tuner plugged in, make sure you know what note you want to tune to. So this is a D sharp, and that's a little bit too high, and I want this string to be actually tuned to D. And another really cool thing is that essentially you don't really have to stretch your strings with an Evertune, since the inherent design behind an Evertune is that the strings are never going to go out of tune. So essentially you can kind of skip the whole string stretching process, which is a little bit of a sweet time saver as well, especially if you need to change your strings in a pinch and make sure they are in tune for that set that you need to play later that day. All right, so next up here, when you have the strings pretty well close to the pitch that you want your guitar to be tuned to, what you want to do is actually do the more finer adjustments on the Evertune. There's going to be 3 adjustment points here. The first one is actually back here in that saddle here, right behind where the string kind of feeds through. That is where you're going to be doing the actual majority of your tuning with the Evertune. You're not going to be using the tuners at the top of the headstock. That is just to lock your guitar into the desired zone that you want the guitar to be in, and obviously when you are changing strings on the Evertune. If you're going to be adjusting the tuners at the top of the headstock of the guitar, you're then going to knock the Evertune out of either zone 2 or 3, and then you're going to cause potential problems for yourself down the road. The next contact point on the Evertune is going to be right here where the screwdriver is pointing. This is how you adjust the string height of every individual string on the Evertune, so make sure you detune the guitar entirely to make those adjustments to adjust the string height. Last but not least, we have the intonation access screws back here, and that's going to adjust the intonation to make sure your guitar is in tune across all of the frets on the guitar. All right, so at this point, essentially, the guitar is more or less in tune, or at least it's pretty close to the tuning that I want this guitar to be in. So now, kind of like a Floyd Rose, this is kind of like your fine-tuning adjustment pieces down here. This is where you are going to do the majority of your tuning. So I'm going to pluck this note here. Obviously you can't see the tuner because it's not on screen right now, but the note is a little bit sharp. So since the note is sharp, I'm then going to turn the Allen wrench in the adjustment piece here to the left to then loosen that adjustment piece here, which then lowers the pitch of the guitar. I also like to do the attack tuning method, so essentially I'm going to pick the note and then tune it, because you actually want to tune the note that is being played and not the actual decay or the sustain of that note. So if the note is sharp, you just turn the Allen wrench to the left, and if the note is a little bit too flat, turn the Allen wrench to the right to then increase the pitch, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. Not as bad as some people might think the Evertune is for actually tuning the guitar. So as you can see here, the action on this guitar is a little all over the place here depending on the individual strings here. So I'm just going to set this up real quick and show you a couple highlights on screen right now of how you properly adjust adjust the action on your Evertune guitar. So make sure you adjust the action on your Evertune guitar, or any guitar essentially without any sort of string tension on it, and then you're going to use this back screw right here where my finger is to adjust the action on every string on the Evertune guitar. And last but not least, but arguably one of the most important parts of a good setup is actually having your guitar fully intonated. And you're gonna adjust the intonation on the Evertune pretty well the same way as you would for any other traditional guitar here. So simply using the tuner here, I'm going to pluck the open note that is in tune. I'm gonna pluck the 12th fret. So now in this case, the note on the tuner, when I'm playing it at the 12th fret, is actually a little bit flat. So what that means is that the saddle of the guitar actually has to move towards the fingerboard on the guitar. If the note that I was playing at the 12th fret is too sharp, what I wanna do is actually take the saddle and move it backwards. And you're simply just gonna do that by turning the Allen wrench either left or right. A little bit of lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, and then you do that for every string on the guitar, and then you are fully done setting up your guitar with an Evertune. And here we have the LTD Black Metal series guitar with the Evertune all finished up here. And doing a little bit of research on this particular guitar, it seems like this is an upgrade from Evertune. So essentially, they would have the regular LTD Black Metal, like with a hip shot bridge, then Evertune does their thing and they retrofit an Evertune bridge onto this guitar, which is super sick. So I'm pretty sure the only way you can get this is right through Evertune. All right, now let's go over some of the specs and the features on this LTD Black Metal series guitar here. We have an alder body here, very simple electronics layout here, a blacked out Seymour Duncan Black Winter, one of my favorite passive pickups of all time. One volume here, which you can then pull up on, which will split the coil of that Seymour Duncan Black Winter, so then you can get some single coil kind of tones. Evertune bridge back down here. We have a maple neck here, which is, I believe, ESP's thin U shape here. It's pretty comfy, it's unoffensive, and it is not super flat, and it's not super thin, so your hands aren't really gonna cramp up on this guitar. It's pretty comfy and very easy to get used to. Now moving to the top side of the neck, we have an ebony fingerboard here, 24 stainless steel frets. We have a 25.5-inch scale length, around a 14-inch fretboard radius, and it's pretty comfy, pretty easy to get used to. And rounding things off at the top of the headstock here, LTD branded locking tuners. They hold tuning just fine, and obviously the Evertune is doing the bulk of the work, but the locking tuners make string changing so easy and so convenient. And yeah, reverse headstock, can't go wrong with it, it's awesome. And lastly, I just have a little bit of foam in here just to get rid of that sympathetic vibration, so you're not hearing any strings ringing out when you're playing or when you're tracking. It's a pretty sweet guitar. Fingerboard access is really good. The Evertune sets up really great. No real qualms with this. This is made in that same South Korea factory that makes a lot of really great high-spec import guitars, you know, from Ormsby, Schecter, LTD, PRS, SE lines, and I really don't have anything negative to write home about this guitar. Now, keep in mind, this is a very purpose-built and focused guitar. Like, I'm not going to complain that this guitar doesn't have a neck pickup, because this is clearly not designed for someone who would want to have a neck pickup. This is for someone who just wants to riff and to thrash on this thing, because it's no nonsense. One bridge pickup, one volume, and bridge that'll keep your guitar in tune forever, and you know, it's just blacked out. And honestly, if you're looking for a guitar like this that is just super decked out and ready for metal and is just kind of no nonsense and just ready to go right away, and especially if you want to get a guitar that has an Evertune bridge into your collection, this would probably check all of those boxes if you are looking for something that is, you know, just like this. And now with all that being said, let's hear the LTD Black Metal series guitar with a few isolated guitar tones. So now what do I think about the LTD Black Metal series guitar with an Evertune? And personally, I think this is a really great guitar. You know, this guitar is pretty limited in terms of the features, but I think this is catered to a very specific audience and a very specific player. If you want a single bridge pickup, one volume, an Evertune bridge, and something that is totally blacked out and stealthed out like this is probably your guitar, especially because this guitar you can buy right off the shelf from Evertune and they'll ship direct to you. This is a really great option as well. Comes in at around $1,600, and for the technology that's invested into an Evertune guitar and the build quality that comes from an LTD in that South Korea factory, you are getting a really great guitar. And sure, it might not have some of the other bells and whistles or features that maybe some other guitars come with, in terms of price, and especially for the money. And if you are wanting something that is very specific like this, you get your stainless steel frets, ebony fingerboard, glow-in-the-dark side markers, Evertune bridge, and just look at this thing. It is pretty menacing and pretty aggressive. So if all of those specs are checking the box for you and you really want this Evertune bridge, and especially at that price point of around $1,600 US, this might be the guitar for you. And honestly, if I was to look for a guitar that was literally just like this, I was only playing super aggressive metal, only wanted a bridge pickup and wanted an Evertune, and wanting maybe a 6-string or maybe the 7-string version of this guitar that also can come with an Evertune right from Evertune, this would probably be my go-to, because I've honestly just had such a really great time with this guitar and with past LTD and ESP guitars in general and other guitars that have been built in that South Korea factory. There's nothing negative to write home about this outside of maybe not having a few extra bells and whistles. So if you can live without those extra bells and whistles, maybe like a neck pickup or anything like that, I think you're going to have a really great guitar at the end of the day, and especially a guitar that's never going to go out of tune thanks to that Evertune bridge. Now that's going to do it for today's video on the LTD Black Metal series guitar here, with a bit of a tutorial on how to deal with an Evertune bridge. If you like something and you learned something new in this video, make sure you drop it in the comments below. I will always engage with you all in the comments down there. If you liked the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Now if this is your first time checking out one of my videos, please consider subscribing. I have tons more videos that go over guitar maintenance tips, repairs, and other guitar related topics. And if you really love what I do, make sure you hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that I upload. Thanks for checking this out, and I'll see you next time.